I was about to bang my head on the wall. I have been consulting with Identifix. I had been doing any kind of research I could think of, and there's one thing that in 20 years of working on diesel engines that I have never seen happen that happened with this truck. All right, this truck has a story, and I'm about to tell it after I remove this so it doesn't fall off. The story is, this truck for the past several years for the customer has randomly popped up with a P0299 code, which is low boost pressure. Normally that's a pretty easy fix, turbo problem or a boost leak. This one was anything but easy. So let's get into it and see if I can explain this to where you guys understand what happened, and maybe this will help you fix your truck if you're experiencing the same situation. Contact. So this truck has been on the channel before, I believe. This thing has 369, 68, somewhere around there. Let's turn the key on and see what we've got. 368,775 miles on the odometer. This truck has been a very good truck. It is very much rust free. Customer takes really good care of this truck. I've put in upper and lower ball joints and a few other things, but one persistent problem that he had is that this thing would throw a P0299 code. Now, I did not record trying to figure this problem out because this problem took me almost 4 weeks. Actually, it's over 4 weeks to figure out. And I normally don't like to fire the parts cannon, but we did kind of fire the parts cannon at this truck. So if you know, the P0299 code is for turbo under boost. There's a few things that can cause the turbo under boost situation. Normally, if it's the turbo, normally you will have other turbo codes because these are VGT turbos, which means variable geometry turbos. They have vanes inside that move, and you know, whether you want more boost or less boost will adjust accordingly. It creates less turbo lag that way and better performance. Oftentimes, if you have something with the turbo, you will have other codes associated with the P0299. This one legitimately only had the P0299 code. However, we did a lot of things. First thing I did is I tested to make sure we had no boost leaks, because obviously a loss of boost pressure will cause that P0299 code. I took it loose up there at the turbo, blocked it off down here, and we pressure tested all of our fittings, our charge air cooler, and everything. Nothing leaked. It held pressure. So we knew that we weren't losing any boost pressure unless it was after the EGR, or after this part right here, which you can lose boost pressure through the EGR. Okay, so we decided to block off the EGR temporarily to test it and just make sure that the EGR valve is not leaking. No difference. And I might also add, this problem would only show up when the engine was cold and for only like 2 minutes. So it was very hard to duplicate the issue. You'd have to drive it, and you'd have to catch it in the very first minute to 2 minutes of taking off, and it wouldn't show up when it was just sitting there idling, but it would as soon as you took off, and within a minute, 2 minutes tops, this code would set. It used to be very random. It started to progress to this time when it would do it every time, so that made it easier for us to diagnose. It was still a bear, as you will hear. So let's walk through the steps of what we did. We pressure tested our tubing. We figured out that there was no leaks. I found a small exhaust leak leading up to the turbo, because if you don't have the correct exhaust getting up to the turbo, you can have a lack of turbo boost, which would be an underboost situation. So we fixed the exhaust leak. Same thing. Immediately would set the P0299 code as soon as you took off. Like I said, after 2 minutes of running down the road, it would not have any turbo lag. It would have no lack of boost, good power, everything run good. You could clear the code and it would not come back until you shut it off, let it set for, I had to leave it set for about 4 or 5 hours, go out and drive it, and most times it would do it again. So I was like, well, the only other thing that I haven't checked is the turbo. So I've got a local guy here that can rebuild turbos, and he said, take the turbo off and I'll look over it. He found that the turbine wheel was extra thin, was flexing. Other than that, he said there was really not a whole lot wrong with the turbo. So we put the turbo back on, same problem, no difference. So at this point, the customer's like still being very patient. He said, go ahead and put a new mass airflow sensor and a map sensor on it, just to see if anything changes. We put the map sensor on, and our reading stabilized on our boost pressure in the scan tool live data. So I was like, hey, we fixed the problem. Nope, it came right back. What I started to notice was that I could give this thing all kinds of fuel and it would smoke, and it would, because this does not have DPF or SCR, nothing like that. This is pre-emissions, except for the EGR. It would not build boost until all of a sudden it would build boost, and then everything was fine. So we knew, and these are GM mass airflow and map sensor. So we felt like that was not going to be much of an issue there. Now, there is a possibility that one of those was bad, but we were not building boost. I could feel it not building boost. The turbo would not light up. Previously, the customer had put a 4-inch straight pipe on it. There's no restrictions in the exhaust, thinking maybe the catalytic converter was plugged and it needed to be relieved of its duties. Not the case. Still the same problem. What are we left with? There's got to be a restriction somewhere. So, put a new air filter in it. Customer wanted to go with a GM air filter. So we put a new GM air filter in this thing. Same problem. I was about to bang my head on the wall. I have been consulting with Identifix. I had been doing any kind of research I could think of, and there's one thing that in 20 years of working on diesel engines that I have never seen happen that happened with this truck. What happened was I finally found a thread in Identifix where they talked about bypassing the charge air cooler, because sometimes the charge air cooler can plug up internal. Now, I felt kind of dumb for not even thinking of that possibility. And if I would have, in live data, been paying attention, because now that I know it, I could tell right away that this charge air cooler was plugged. And this is one of those learning curves. You can laugh at me all you want, but this is not a common issue that I have run into. In live data, what I noticed so what I did is I took this pipe and I basically ran it from this side over to this side and bypass the charge air cooler. It builds boost every single time, no problem at all. You can hear the turbo spools up. In live data, you can see now, because when I would first start this motor, when it was cold, in live data, we would start to get a vacuum on the manifold air pressure map sensor reading, which is this reading right here. That should have told me that we have a restriction from this point to this point somewhere. But again, I did not know that. I didn't put two and two together because, like I said, I have not personally, I have never ran into this problem. And I've been working on diesels since I was 16 years old. So it's 25 years of working on diesels. I have never seen an internally plugged charge air cooler, because as soon as I bypass that thing, I could get boost out of this thing every time I took off. So no leaks in this charge air cooler, but it is plugged internal. What I am thinking has caused this is this situation right here. Let me get my light out here. My O light, not sponsored, just like it. This right here, that is the crankcase vent going right into the intake of the turbo. And as miles crept up on this truck, we're starting to get naturally more blow-by, which is putting more blow-by into our turbo. It's got to come through the charge air cooler, and the charge air cooler has a bunch of small fins running back and forth. As you can see, there's a bunch of small fins, and we may end up yet trying to see what's inside that thing, what those fins look like. If I can get it to show up on my scope, I'll try to look up in through there and see if we can see anything. But this thing is plugged internal. What I think happened is all of this stuff, which is basically oil and crankcase vent and all that stuff, that has over time built up and is sitting in these cross tubes here, which is creating a situation where when the engine first starts, those tubes are plugged up, creating a restriction until the turbo can build enough boost to kind of move that through our charge air cooler. The air warms up and it becomes less dense as well. So long story short, we had a plugged charge air cooler internal. But this is a long-winded story to tell you that we have a bad charge air cooler, and we've put in a high flow PPE charge air cooler, not sponsored. And I didn't do an install video on it because I just want to get this thing done. It's been at the shop long enough. I want to get it done. I want to get it out of here. So we're recharging the AC. We're vacuuming it currently, but we're going to recharge it. We're going to take this thing out for a test drive. I'll bring you guys back then. This has caused me a lot of stress. Now, I feel great now that I've figured out the problem, but I also want to give a huge shout out to the customer who was more than generous with his time and with allowing me to do what I needed to do to try to diagnose this problem. So if you're coming into the same problem that I've came into, check your charge air cooler, bypass it, make sure it builds boost. So that's my TED Talk for the day. We're going to get this thing recharged, take you out on a test drive. All right, we're getting ready to go out on a test drive. I did make sure that all our codes are cleared. We have no check engine light. Starting the engine, and let's go on a test drive. I do need to wash this thing up before I give it to the customer. Being here at the shop so long, it got a little bit dirty. So map sensor still reading 14.36, which is atmospheric pressure here in the state of Illinois. So let's go see if we still have adequate boost pressure. And if you remember what I said would happen when we first take off driving, we've exited the building. First take off driving, this thing would not build any boost, and it would actually have a vacuum. That thing would drop down to 13 PSI on the map sensor, just doing this right here. So I should have known that that was a problem, but you know, I didn't. Whoa, stop it. Oh, I know what happened. I lost my Wi-Fi signal. Hang on, abort mission. As we can see, now we're reading barometric pressure on both. Before, the map sensor would have been, like I said, down in the low 13s. Now, the truth is in the pudding right here. Do we build boost? Look at that. Immediate boost building. That thing would create a vacuum as soon as I tried to take off out of the drive. I could depend on it that the check engine light was going to come on by the time I hit this corner right here. It would, if it was going to do it. And like I said, it had to set for several hours before it would do it. So if it was going to do it, it was going to do it by the time I got to here, because it would not build any kind of boost. So we already know that we have problem solved. But let's just go out on a test drive. Look at that. 10 pounds of boost right off the bat. Turbo sounds splendid. It doesn't sound as choked up as it did. I wonder why. Airflow. It's all about airflow. That's what we need. So, yeah, we are building good boost. This thing's good to go. We're going to wash this truck off, and the customer's to the point where his other truck actually ran out of power steering fluid because of a leak yesterday evening. So now he needs this truck. And I want to thank my dad for coming in last night and working several hours to get this thing going back together. I finished it up this morning then, but it really helped me out a bunch. So yeah, appreciate Dad coming in and doing that for me. So like I said, I didn't record me trying to diagnose this problem because, for one, I have to, when I'm deep in thought trying to diagnose something, I cannot be trying to focus on two things at once. Matter of fact, I get a little grumpy when somebody comes in and interrupts me or talks to me if I'm trying to figure something out, because I usually get laser focused on trying to figure it out, and I have a one-track mind. I'm a guy and I have a one-track mind. So when I'm focused on something, interruptions will cause me to get sidetracked. The train derails, and therefore I have to put it back on the rails and get my track straightened out again, and it just takes time. So recording and trying to figure out this problem that I've never been able, or had, that I've never ran into before, yeah, I was not going to try to record and do that at the same time. Plus, it would have been a long, drawn out video, because this thing, it threw me for a loop-de-doop. So, thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you more than you know. It's you guys watching these videos that keep me motivated to do this. Now, I know that I haven't been putting out videos like I usually do, but it's because of this thing right here and a lot of other things that happened in the last month or two. So yeah, we're going to try to get back up into the normal swing of things and get a video out every week if possible. So appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. Have a wonderful day. May God bless each and every one of you.